Blades of Fire is an action-adventure game from Mercury Steam, released on May 22, 2025, for PS5, PC, and Xbox Series X and S. It's directed by Enrique Alvarez, with art by Arturo Serrano and music composed by Oscar Araujo. The game builds on Mercury Steam's experience from hits like Castlevania, Lords of Shadow, and Metroid Dread. You play as Aaron Delira, a warrior wielding a sacred hammer who's on a mission to assassinate Queen Neria, the one who cursed all steel to turn into stone. The game stands out with its unique weapon forging system, strategic combat, and a richly crafted dark fantasy world. While it has some really impressive elements, it also struggles a bit with pacing, story depth, and making navigation smooth. In the following, I'll dive into what works, what doesn't, and how it stacks up against other games in the genre. The story takes place in a dark fantasy world where ancient forgers created humanity and taught them how to make steel weapons. Queen Neria, after taking power, curses the steel of her enemies, turning their weapons into stone and leaving them defenseless against her monstrous army. Aaron Delira, a talented blacksmith with a sacred hammer, sets out on a dangerous quest to reach the royal palace and take down Neria. He's joined by Adso de Zelk, a young scholar who records their journey with notes and sketches, adding depth to the world's lore. The story clearly draws from classic fantasy movies like Excalibur and Ladyhawke, and themes of reunion and revenge that remind me of the Count of Monte Cristo. While the premise is intriguing, the story itself can sometimes feel a bit simple, and there's a major plot twist later on that shifts the focus to a character who isn't as well developed. Aaron Delira is the central figure, a muscular warrior with a tragic backstory, embodying the archetype of a stoic hero. His blunt personality contrasts with Adso de Zelk's youthful energy, creating a dynamic duo that adds charm through their banter, though some repetitive dialogue can become grating. Queen Neria serves as the primary antagonist, wielding her curse and commanding an army of monstrous creatures. Other characters, including various NPCs and unique bosses, populate the world, with Adso's journal providing insights into their roles and the broader lore. The main characters are really likable, and their interactions add a nice, uplifting vibe to the game. Their banter is usually funny and helps keep things feeling lively. During more repetitive parts, like climbing ladders or navigating obstacles, the sarcasm can start to feel a bit overdone and lose its charm. Blades of Fire is a third-person action-adventure game with RPG and Souls-like elements, centered around its innovative weapon forging system. Players craft weapons through a mini-game where they strike heated metal to shape it, affecting attributes like weight, length, durability, penetration, and edge quality. With 7 weapon families and over 30 unique forged scrolls, the system offers near-infinite customization, allowing players to tailor weapons to their playstyle. I found this mechanic to be one of the more interesting parts of the game, but was a bit confusing at first since the game doesn't do a great job of explaining how it works right away. The combat feels pretty tactical. You have to aim for specific parts of the enemy, like the head or torso, and pick the right type of attack, slashing, stabbing, or blunt, based on color cues that show how effective each one will be. Managing stamina is really important too. Blocking helps you recover it, while parrying can break through enemy defenses and open them up for big hits. The game has a Souls-like vibe, where dying means you lose your equipped weapon and respawn at the last Anvil checkpoint, with all enemies coming back as well. Weapons also wear down over time, so you need to either repair them or craft new ones. It adds some nice strategic layers, but it can definitely get frustrating at times. Exploration takes place in a large, interconnected world full of alternate routes and hidden spots, which really encourages you to go off the beaten path to find secrets and boost your stats. The map doesn't really help much, and the level design can get pretty confusing. Twisting paths and inconsistent highlights for interactable objects make getting around more frustrating than it should be. The game also feels a bit too long, around 40 hours, and honestly, trimming it down to 30 might have made the pacing feel tighter. Still, when you do stumble on a shortcut or a secret area, it's genuinely magical and makes the effort feel worth it. The visuals are definitely one of the game's strongest aspects. Environments like snowy fields, sandy ruins, and crumbling castles look absolutely stunning. The art style feels like a love letter to classic fantasy, with bold colors and dramatic scenes that remind me of old-school PS2-era games, influenced by artists like Frank Frazetta and Gustav Doré. The world is consistently beautiful across all the different areas, and the PC version runs really well, with solid HDR support and even Steam Deck compatibility, which is a big plus. Sometimes the environments can feel a bit too busy, making it hard to tell where you're supposed to go, which can be a little frustrating during exploration. The voice acting really helps bring Aaron and Adso to life. Their witty banter adds a lot of personality and even a bit of that nostalgic charm from the Xbox 360 or PS3 era. It's fun at first, but some of their lines start to repeat during things like climbing or interacting with objects, and that can get a bit annoying over time. The overall sound design does a great job building atmosphere and pulling you into the world.
The Aureus steel ingot.
While there isn't a lot of detailed info out there about Oscar Araujo's musical score, the audio as a whole really supports the grand fantasy vibe and helps make the adventure feel more immersive. The world of Blades of Fire feels rich and full of lore, with a lot of the story delivered through Adso's journal entries and environmental details. The interconnected design really pushes you to explore, and it's rewarding when you find shortcuts, hidden areas, or stat boosts tucked away off the main path. There's a strong sense of fantasy and adventure here. It actually reminded me a bit of Elden Ring, though the Souls-like elements are much lighter, which makes it feel more approachable. The map isn't very helpful, and the level design can get overly complex, which sometimes turns exploration into more of a hassle than it should be. Blades of Fire has some standout moments, like forging your first weapon, which feels like a big milestone and opens the door to a surprisingly deep crafting system. The boss fights are definite highlights too, with tough, memorable battles that come with unique mechanics and a cinematic flair. There's also a major plot twist partway through that shifts the focus of the story, but honestly, it didn't quite land for me. It moves attention to a character that isn't as fleshed out, which weakens the impact. Some missions, especially the longer escort ones like the one involving a crying skeleton child, felt more tedious than engaging, and they pulled me out of the experience a bit. The weapon forging system really stands out, offering a lot of depth and customization that makes crafting feel engaging and satisfying. Combat feels strategic and rewarding once you get the hang of it, with plenty of depth to keep things interesting. The visuals are stunning, and the world building does a great job of creating an immersive and compelling environment. The boss battles are tough and cinematic, adding a real sense of excitement and scale to the adventure. The story feels pretty simple, and there's a plot twist that comes off as awkward and disappointing. The pacing drags at times too. The 40-hour length feels longer than it needs to be, and the repetitive enemy types don't help with keeping things fresh. Blades of Fire reminds me a bit of God of War with its third-person action, cinematic style, and a protagonist carrying a tragic past. It also shares some Souls-like traits, like challenging combat and exploration, similar to Elden Ring, but it feels more accessible overall. What really sets it apart is the weapon forging system, which adds a fresh twist not really seen in those other games. Compared to earlier action-adventure titles, it leans more into RPG mechanics, blending action and exploration in interesting ways. However, it doesn't quite reach the narrative depth of God of War or the detailed world design of Elden Ring. Some pacing problems and confusing navigation can make the experience less smooth, especially given the strong competition among 2025 releases. Overall, the game feels ambitious and mostly succeeds with its innovative crafting and tactical combat, along with impressive visuals that bring its world to life. If you enjoy action-adventure games with a crafting focus, Blades of Fire offers a rewarding experience. But if you're looking for a deep narrative or seamless exploration, it might leave you wanting compared to some of the genre's top titles.